He is not the best player in the world. He doesn't have a guaranteed contract or a strong name in the league, but when basketball needed it most, he showed up. Mac McClung, a white point guard, barely 6 feet 2 inches, from a lost town in Virginia, with a leap that seems drawn and an energy that doesn't fit in today's NBA. While the stars drop out of the dunk contest without explanation, he stepped in and made it spectacular again. He won it, then defended it, and then once more, 3 titles in a row, the best show in years. All of that without being an NBA player, and yes, it sounds ridiculous, but that's how it is. The next day he was back in the G League, playing without media, without minutes, without anything. Because the NBA, it seems, doesn't care. And that's the most absurd part. We're not talking about a rookie with no experience. We're talking about the MVP, the champion, the top scorer, and still, no one calls him. Why? What don't they see in him? Since when is this happening? To understand it, we have to go back to when Mac wasn't an oddity, but just a kid with a ball and a dream to fly. Gate City, Virginia, 2,000 inhabitants, 1 mountain, 1 high school, and not much more. A place where basketball wasn't news until Mac McClung showed up. Coming from a family full of athletes, a football-playing father, a baseball-playing uncle, a sister who also played soccer, Mac chose a different path. He chose an orange ball, and without knowing it, he chose to be different. From his early high school years, something seemed off. Not because of his height or his build, because of the way he moved, the way he exploded toward the rim, the energy with which he attacked every play. His games stopped being just games. They became events. The stands filled up. Cameras started showing up, scouts, fans, and when his highlights hit the internet, everything exploded. One of those nights, he scored 64 points, in another, 47, and in the state final, another 47. He broke records that once seemed untouchable. He surpassed Allen Iverson's mark for most points in a season and J.J. Redick's in a final. All of that while his mixtape was spreading across the entire country like a virus. But there was one night that changed his fate. In his senior debut, after scoring 47 points, someone special was watching. Patrick Ewing, the former NBA player, Knicks legend, and Georgetown coach. That performance was enough for him to want Mac on his team. He recruited him right then and there. And with that signature, Mac sealed his jump to the big leagues. Gate City, that little forgotten town, suddenly had the most watched player in the country. But even though the clips were getting millions of views and his name was starting to gain attention, the respect wasn't coming in the same proportion. In the system's eyes, he was still the white kid who can jump, the one who entertains, the one who makes mixtapes, nothing more. And that, even though no one was saying it yet, already marked the path he was going to follow. To anyone who had seen him in action, Mac was a clear prospect. But when the official rankings came out, the story was different. He wasn't invited to the McDonald's All-American. He didn't appear in ESPN's Top 100, not even in the Top 200. They placed him at number 233 in the country. 233? It was absurd. And even with everything against him, the rankings, the prejudice, someone saw him for what he really was. A big university, a big name, a door that opened, and he didn't waste it. He knew he wasn't going to make it through the shortcuts others had. His path was going to be a fight, and in that moment, it truly began. His arrival in college basketball marked a new chapter. It was no longer enough to dunk or go viral. Now he had to maintain the level in a more demanding environment against bigger, stronger, more polished players. And that's when the fairy tale started to turn darker. Not because he played badly, but because once again, no one wanted to see him for what he was. His first year at Georgetown was solid. He didn't blow everything up, but he didn't hide either. He averaged 13.1 points per game, was the top scoring freshman in his conference, and had performances like a 38-point night against Little Rock that raised eyebrows. But when you looked at the numbers closely, doubts started to surface. 39% from the field, 27% from 3, few assists, many turnovers. He wasn't a cerebral point guard, he was a pure scorer, the typical combo guard who plays on impulse, not by the book, and in college basketball that doesn't always go over well. In that first year, he was given some leeway. He was seen as a long-term project, a player who could explode if he learned to control his chaos. But the pressure was there, because with his name already big on social media and all eyes on him, people expected a real leap. And in his second year, some of that happened. He raised his average to 15.7 points. He looked more mature, stronger, more focused. He was no longer just a highlight. He was starting to understand when to pass, when to stop, when to shoot. But just when everything seemed to be falling into place, he got injured. A poorly timed injury at the worst moment. He was out for several weeks, and when he came back, he wasn't the same. When it wasn't just physical, it was mental. He returned more cautious, more inconsistent, and with that, the doubts came back too. People stopped talking about potential and started talking about ceiling. The implicit verdict was clear. What you see is what you get. Not much more. He wasn't long. He wasn't versatile. He didn't fit into that modern idea of a moldable player. And in that context, his style, Explosive, direct, rough, didn't win anyone over. And just like that, quietly, he started to fall off the radar. After 2 seasons with good stats but without a clear future narrative, Mac made a decision that broke from the script. He transferred. He left for Texas Tech. He wanted a change of scenery, a place where he could be himself without having to justify what he wasn't. And that, in a way, was the beginning of the leap, but also of the free fall. At Texas Tech, Mac started like he had something to prove. 20 points in his debut. Aggressive, direct, with a confidence you could see even in his body language. And it wasn't a fluke. He kept that level up throughout the season, averaging 15.5 points, improving his shooting percentages, showing more control in every play. He didn't just mature as a player, he learned to play within a team, to read the game better, to adapt to the context. That growth was noticeable. He was awarded the Big 12 Newcomer of the Year, a recognition they don't just hand out. The Big 12 is one of the toughest conferences in the country, and to stand out there, you have to make real noise. It was, without a doubt, his best version in college basketball. More efficient, more complete, more focused. And yet, he was still invisible to the eyes that mattered. He wasn't on any mock draft. No one projected him in the first or even second round. Once again, the same old story. His game didn't fit the mold, and that alone was enough to write him off. They advised him to stay 1 more year, ride the momentum, fine-tune the details, build a more attractive profile for scouts. But Mac felt something else. He felt that staying would mean getting stuck. That waiting for validation wasn't his path. That risk was part of the journey. He entered the 2021 draft knowing it was a gamble, and the coin landed on the cruelest side. No one picked him, not even at pick 60. 0. Nothing. For many, that would have been the end. The classic, you give up or settle. But Mac wasn't one of those. Never was. If they wouldn't let him in, he'd sneak in. If they didn't invite him, he'd show up anyway. Because while others came through the front door, he was used to climbing in through the window. And that's when the G League appeared, the only real option. For many, a purgatory. For him, a new chance to set everything on fire. The Lakers signed him for the Summer League, and from the start, it was clear he wasn't there just to fill out the roster. He quickly clicked with Austin Reeves, created plays, scored, defended like it was a finals game, and earned a contract with South Bay, the franchise's G League team. And that's when everything exploded. In his debut, he faced Ignite, the NBA's experimental team packed with young stars like Jalen Green and Jonathan Kuminga. It was the perfect stage for elite prospects to shine, but the best player on the court was Mac. 24 points, 9 assists, 6 rebounds, and a win. Against all odds, the kid who supposedly wasn't NBA material had just spoiled the party for 2 future top picks. That season was a statement. Nearly 20 points per game, 6 assists, 47% from the field, 39% from 3. Solid numbers, more polished games, smarter decisions. He was named G League Rookie of the Year and made the All-Rookie First Team. It wasn't just hype, it wasn't just athleticism, it was real basketball and damn good basketball. He even made his official NBA debut, 20 minutes with the Lakers in a late-season game against Denver. He had a couple of nice plays, a dunk that made the highlight reels, and that was it. He was traded to Chicago where he played 2 minutes, literally 2, as if everything before that had meant nothing. But he didn't give up. The following year, he joined the Warriors' Summer League squad. And once again, he stood out. More controlled, less obsessed with scoring, he was distributing, reading the pace better. They signed him and cut him before the season started. Once again, the same cycle. Then came the G League opportunity with the Sixers. The Delaware Bluecoats, and there, McClung became flat-out unstoppable. He averaged nearly 20 points per game, 5 assists, and led the team to the finals. He was a leader in every sense, a player who made a difference every night, but he was still stuck with the label of almost NBA. He debuted with the Lakers, 20 minutes against Denver, a huge dunk. Then he was traded to Chicago, 2 minutes on the court, Summer League with the Warriors, starting point guard, once again a standout, and they cut him before the season even started. He had already lived all of that. All of it, in less than a year. And if you look at it that way, it sounds like a story that writes itself. The kid fighting from the bottom, who finally steps onto an NBA court, throws down a highlight dunk, and then disappears. No second chance. Not even one more play to redeem himself. Just a hard cut. Invisible again. Because when you're Mac McClung, the margin is 0. If you play well, it's because the game didn't matter. If you play poorly, it's because you're not good enough. If you shine in the Summer League, it's expected. If you don't stand out, you're done. The script was already written before he ever stepped on the court, and still, he didn't go cry in the locker room. He didn't make a scene. He didn't take the easy route to Europe or China to make money and live comfortably. He chose to stay in the mud, in the trenches, waiting for another chance, even if no one was promising anything, until something unexpected happened, something that put him right back in the spotlight, not for what he did in the game, but for what he could do in the air. The slam dunk contest had hit rock bottom. The 2022 edition was so bad it was labeled the worst in history. Missed dunks, players with no charisma, silence in the arena.
Is he going back? Oh, he turned. Oh, man.
A graveyard for what was once the most anticipated event of All-Star Weekend. And of course, in 2023, the pressure was sky high. They had to revive it. No matter what, the solution, a dark horse, an unknown name to most of the public, a kid who didn't even have an NBA contract, Mac McClung. But there was one legal issue. To participate, the league requires the player to be active on an NBA roster. So the Philadelphia 76ers made a last-minute move. They signed him 4 days before the event, literally a symbolic cosmetic contract just so he could meet the requirement. It wasn't guaranteed, he wasn't part of the main squad, it was a costume. A label that said NBA and expired before the weekend ended. And so, amid doubts, skepticism, and a bit of snobbery, McClung stepped onto the stage and he crushed it, like really crushed it. Dunk after dunk, all clean, all different, all precise. Technique, creativity, power, roars from the crowd, players filming with their phones, judges unsure what score to give. He was a miniature hurricane, and with a calm smile, he took home the trophy, swept the floor with everyone. It felt like a fairy tale, but by Monday, everything was back to normal. No NBA minutes, no calls, no new contracts, just a round of empty applause and some TV interviews, a few articles calling him the white miracle who saved the dunk contest. As if that were the important part. And while the show faded out, McClung went back to the grind, back to Delaware, back to the G League, back to practices and games nobody watches. Because while everyone was talking about his flight, he was already thinking about what really mattered, winning the championship. And proving, once again, that his talent wasn't a trick, it was a message. After the All-Star show and with his team solidly in the playoffs, McClung approached the final stretch as a leader. He raised his level even further. In the G League postseason, he averaged 25.3 points and nearly 6 assists per game. In the finals, against the same team that had beaten them the year before, he put the series on his back. In the decisive game, he dropped 30 points and 8 assists, hit the championship-winning 3 in the final seconds, lifted the trophy as finals MVP. The guy had done it all, everything, and he had done it with the focus on the team, not the viral dunk. He'd won by playing basketball, simple and effective. And at that point, it finally looked like the door was opening. The Sixers brought him up to the main roster, gave him his chance, and it was no small thing. He played against Brooklyn in one of the season finales and responded with 20 points, 9 rebounds, and 9 assists, a complete performance, the kind you don't often see from someone without a guaranteed contract, but that was it. The following season, his only NBA game was against Memphis. He played less than 5 minutes, no real chances, no assigned role, just a symbolic gesture, an empty two-way contract there only to fulfill paperwork. He didn't play in the playoffs. He wasn't part of the plan. They didn't re-sign him. They didn't even mention him. It was as if he'd never been there. And back to the G League he went, this time with the Orlando Magic. But in the same movie, dominating a league that was already too small for him, while NBA franchises ignored him completely. And he, far from complaining or giving up, did what he does best. Play. He played so much and so well that they had no choice but to name him MVP of the season. Top scorer, 25.7 points, more than 6 assists per game, 50% from the field, 40% from 3. Team leader number 1 in the conference, best offense in the league, once again, the best, and yet 0 NBA minutes, 0 real opportunities, 0 role. They called him back for one thing only, to defend his dunk contest title again. At this point, the question practically asks itself, what more does he have to do to be taken seriously? He's won everything in the G League, he's led teams, won finals, hit clutch threes, and still, no one wants him on an NBA roster. Why? The most superficial answer is size. McClung is 6 feet 2 inches without long arms or an intimidating frame. By today's standards, that's almost a structural disadvantage. The league is obsessed with the perfect combo. 6'6" players who switch on defense, shoot threes, handle the ball, and run in transition. The mold is already built, and McClung doesn't fit it. He doesn't have the body, the length, the prototype. But if the problem were only physical, how do you explain guys even shorter who found their place? How do you explain that at his position, backup point guard, combo guard, spark plug, there are real gaps on dozens of teams who choose to fill them with names that bring no impact? What is it that keeps him out? The real answer is murkier. It's mindset. Style, DNA. McClung plays with a different logic. He's unpredictable, creative, uncomfortable for the system. He's not the obedient point guard who runs plays like a robot. He makes his own decisions, takes risks, breaks patterns. He has that rebelliousness that can win you a game, but that same rebelliousness unsettles coaches who want full control from the bench. And in a league where non-stars are expected to be cogs in a machine, McClung seems determined to write his own script, and that doesn't get forgiven easily. On top of that, he carries a ridiculous stigma, the dunker label, as if his value were a carnival trick, a viral stunt, nothing more. That narrative that he's just a showman has stuck, when in reality, the truth is very different. People think he's dunking all the time, but this past season, he dunked once, one single time. Everything else was real basketball, reads, tempo, pick and roll, floaters, assists, clutch shots, but that doesn't fit into a YouTube thumbnail. They see him as the guy who entertains, not the guy who competes. And that perception, as unfair as it is, keeps shutting the door. They don't try him as a backup guard. They don't give him real minutes. They don't give him a stretch of games to see if he fits in. So the cycle repeats itself. He doesn't play because he's not NBA. And he's not NBA because he doesn't play. A self-fulfilling prophecy that keeps him on the bench, or worse, forgotten. The guy who's done the most to prove he deserves a shot remains the most ignored. He's 26 years old. He's spent years waiting for a real opportunity, and it's not like he's declining. Quite the opposite. He's still dominating, still improving, but he's already hit the ceiling in the G League. There are no more steps to climb there. He's won it all, proven it all, and the NBA still hasn't picked up the phone. So what does he do? The logical option is to leave, cross the Atlantic, follow the path of so many others the system gave up on too early. Shane Larkin, Mike James, Kendrick Nunn, guys who got tired of waiting for a seat at the table and decided to build their own banquet in Europe, where minutes aren't begged for and where a player like McClung can be a star, not just viral content. The other option is to stay, bet on himself one more time, keep dominating the G League, and accept that once a year, they'll call him to save the dunk contest. Because yes, history is calling too. McClung has already won the slam dunk contest 3 times, and not just any 3. Only Nate Robinson has done the same, not Vince Carter, not Levine, not Gordon, no one. If he wins a 4th edition, he becomes the most decorated dunker in the history of the event. The undisputed king of a show that was dead and that he brought back to life with his body, his airtime, and his fire. He could become a legend, but of a spectacle that doesn't give him what he wants most, to play. So the question is it worth continuing to wait for the validation of a league that has already chosen not to see him? Or has the time come to play for himself? No more asking for permission. There's no easy answer, but one thing is clear, McClung can't stay on pause any longer. Sometimes talent doesn't disappear, it just gets stuck in the wrong place. McClung did everything right. He broke records, won titles, sent arenas into a frenzy, but in a league obsessed with fitting pieces together, he's a lightning bolt that doesn't fit any mold, too good for the G League, too different for the NBA, and while the numbers speak, the awards pile up and the internet cheers him on, NBA franchises keep choosing to look the other way. So the question is no longer whether he's ready, the question is whether modern basketball is willing to embrace a guy who plays how he wants, not how he's expected to. Drop your thoughts in the comment section. This was Hoop Secrets, and I'll see you next time.